But anyway,
Yeah,
on
well,
that note,
yes.
go ahead.
If you were going to pivot, I was going to say that since I don't know whether starting or not, but I tried to get my good retired lawyer friend in Oregon to talk to me a little bit about Oregon. He tried his best to get some election officials he thought he knew to talk to him. He couldn't really get much out of them. And he eventually sent me the election manual that the Secretary of State provided him.
Oh,
in Oregon.
Okay.
But Oregon, there was an interesting thing though. In Oregon, they're the ones where you automatically every registered voter gets a ballot before every election, whether they intend to vote by mail or not. They get it, and I guess they either tear it up and vote in person, don't vote, or fill out the mail-in ballot and do whatever they allow there to cast that ballot. And it turns out that, let me see, 10 states do that.
I'm writing this
excuse
down.
me. No, I didn't say 10. I meant 9. 9 states do it. And another 10 states allow you to opt for a permanent mail-in ballot, which I thought was interesting. So if you decided, let's say you were not able to get out easily, or you were up in some mountain cove up here, and it was harder to vote. It turns out that between those two, and so they were saying that 39% of all registered voters have that option in the United States to either automatically get a ballot or opt in for a permanent mail-in ballot. Now, and the trend was, just as you might expect, the trend on mail-in is going up significantly. The trend on states that require an excuse has gone down. So the legislators are working their way around to the concept of the no excuse, which we have, I think, no excuse ballot. So, but I thought that was interesting that then I was looking at whether they thought it increased voter turnout. The evidence appeared to be, according to this manual and this other resource he gave me in Oregon, suggested that there was an increase in voter turnout of maybe 4, depending on what year you looked at, 4 or what period you looked at, 4 to 5%. So there was an increase, but it wasn't, earth shattering. So, well, here's the number. Between 2018 and 2023, the states with full vote at home, get your ballot automatically, and the states with permanent absentee option rose from 19% of the states to 39% of the states. So in the last 5 years, and of course the researcher said the pandemic had something to do with that change, because that took in the years of the pandemic when people weren't getting out and that sort of thing. So I just thought that might be interesting. The ones that require an excuse to get a mail-in ballot of some sort, that dropped, the states that do that dropped from 40.8% to 24.5%. So I think all I could get from that was there is a trend away from excuse mail-in balloting, clearly. And that trend goes all the way to, we're going to send you a ballot every election automatically. So, so then it's a matter of what your procedures are to deal with potentially that many ballots being sent in. On the other side of it, I read through the Oregon drop site materials. They have drop sites, drop boxes. And I have previously been feeling pretty good about drop boxes, but the more I read it in the Oregon thing, that's a very, equipment and labor intensive effort to secure those boxes. You can imagine if we were talking about, I think last time, about chain of custody issues. Who picks up the box? Do we take someone else there to watch him pick up the box? Do you remember the old thing at the, do y'all remember the Berlin Wall? I remember seeing a documentary where they so distrusted the East German guards that there would always be two guards together. So there'd be less likelihood that one of the guards would let people through the gate, let people through the wall areas. So they couldn't trust each other, so they'd always send two. So I thought it looked like to me that the drop box thing is not something that would make much sense for us to pursue on what we're doing. I mean, it's a dramatic change based on what I read in the Oregon manual. I mean, they had one box for every 30,000 people. I mean, you think about Charlotte, that's a lot of boxes if you followed that kind of. Mm-hmm. And they did understand where they had young people like universities and colleges and things like that. They required a drop box within 4 miles of the university. I don't know where they came up with that number. So, and they had to have, it seems to me that if we consider drop boxes, that you're going to go slow on that. Like, do we have drop boxes at election sites, for instance, on election day? Does anybody know that? I mean, if there was a long line of people, I can see, let's say there's a real long line outside. How some of these people report they waited for an hour or two. If you had a mail-in ballot, I can see how if there was a box inside the election site where the election workers are watching, I can see how you might consider a box there. So I could just walk in, drop it in, skip the line, and go home. I could see always having one at the elections office inside for people just to drop in and drop it off, or maybe even a drive-by in front of the elections office. I don't know. But, well, I don't want to take us too far off the topics that we want to address, but I just thought I would report to you what I was able to come up with from my Oregon source.
Well, I found it very interesting and worthwhile, and I appreciate all that information and that thoughtful search. I think most people on this committee know that I'll have an anxiety attack if we ever got drop boxes down here, because I am sorry, but I just do not. I want my ballot put in a machine that I watched, that I marked, and that I know that the person that's receiving it, there's nothing in between. There's nobody that can possibly tamper with it. I don't trust the system today. And especially when you look at the way that we used to do elections, we used to have one day. It wasn't drawn out to 6 weeks. The results were found within the 24-hour period, or even before that, after the polls closed. We were sure of the winner. It was secure for the most part. Everybody had their ballot. You had to go in and you had to put in your vote. And that's how, when we go over into other countries and that we're developing nations, that's the system that we promote. because it
Right,
is the
right.
most secure. It's the most,
Yeah.
you have the greatest security. And yes, they may suffer, some people may suffer from accessibility, but in the law, at the end of the day, I want a secure vote.
Well, I can agree with you with respect to the Dropbox issue. I think that creates another level of security that requires different people to be involved. I mean, it requires a lot more people to secure it.
The more hands on a ballot, the more hands on a ballot, the more
Right.
time between it being received. That is not security.
But you don't feel that way
We
about the
treat
mail
drug,
system.
yeah, but we treat drug analysis stronger than that, because I used to do it.
Oh, yeah.
I
Well,
worked in phlebotomy, and that was part of the testing.
oh, you
We were
did? Yeah,
brutal with chain of custody, where you
right.
go right in with the person. Okay. So there's reasons for chain of custody. And I just don't trust the system today. And I think that I'm one of many, many people that just don't trust the system.
Well, let's take that a step further. I take it you wouldn't be chairman of the mail-in ballot committee if you weren't trusting mail-in ballots.
Mail-in ballots in general, I agree with. I mean, it's military, it's absentee, but they have to go through up until a certain point, they had to go through a specific process where
Right.
they justified why they weren't able to be there. It was more tracking. It was more making sure that people had to do their due diligence. They just didn't throw out ballots here and there and send them to
Mm-hmm.
random addresses. They didn't do that. And so I'm not against mail-in ballots. What I'm against is the trend that I'm seeing of making it removing the security of it. And when you think about mail-in ballots or the act of voting itself, I think it's trivialized and minimized when just throw it all out. I think people need to be very intentional about voting, that it's a special day, that we go out and we create a ballot and we vote for our people. And we're doing it as free people that believe in this republic. And that it's the act of voting that is also very special. And I think that when you remove that and you just make it so darn easy in the sense that, you have your hands off of it and your eyes off of it, that people take it for granted. I suspect that, my antennas went up when you said, well, it didn't really increase the participation rates, but by 4%. And so why is that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I
I
mean, that you'd have to dig deeper into it to, because there are general numbers here
Yeah,
for
they're just
all
general, and
these
we're just
states.
making assumptions, you know.
Yeah. So
What'd you say,
I
Becky?
I would counter that with we're not in the 1950s anymore, and the people who travel for their jobs, they don't just walk down to the street corner and have a job at the corner. They fly all over the country now because of their jobs, so they're out of town, or they're college students and they're not in the location, their hometown. And so, there are reasons to have, mail-in ballots. And just because you can't go home and walk into your local precinct to vote doesn't mean that you're not, that you don't want to participate.
yeah, I
Well,
think there's a yeah.
absolutely, Becky. But you brought up the 1950s. Things were going just fine before the pandemic. I mean, the people had opportunity to vote absentee, and that there was rules and procedures to do that. They didn't deny you; you just had to justify it. There was more accountability in that.
But do you
And
think
that's
anybody ever checked that? If I said, "Oh, I'm going to be out of town," I didn't have to, this is my flight to LA? I mean, do you think anybody ever checked that?
I think that there were certain rules that they had to follow, and I don't know if everybody checked it, but again, it's about the act of an intentional act that says, okay, I'm not going to be voting, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to have to vote absentee. They had to think about the fact that they weren't going to be there. It's that intentional act that increases in my mind accountability, credibility, that kind of stuff. I think it's important.
Yeah, I do think Becky's right about the travel issue.
Yeah, we do
People
live in a different
travel a
world.
whole lot more. I mean, the world is
It is.
a smaller and smaller, and people travel all the time. I just see so many more opportunities or needs to be able, if I really want to be intentional to vote, even if I like to show, and I personally show up every time. But I agree with you on that point. But I'm also willing to say we can carve out a very robust but secure mail-in system. And
yes, I do believe that it needs to be, if this is the case and this is the trend, then the trade-off is that it better be secure. And then you
right.
have special interest groups or groups, activist groups that say, well, no, then you're discriminating if you do that. I mean, people had a meltdown over a photo ID. And so,
Well, yeah, I think
so there's
I
a
think that will
trade-off.
subside over time. I think those, a lot of times I complained when somebody cut down a tree over in this park the other day, and then I started realizing, well, tree was old, and now I look at it, we're better off without that tree. So I think sometimes we take a while to get used to these changes. I'm not big on changes either, and
Well,
that's part of it.
I love change. I'm not afraid of change. Okay. But I am very, very skeptical of the intentions and motivations of change. And
Yeah.
if it really change works, and sometimes it doesn't work. To me, when you have a greater accountability and security to go get a driver's license or to get assistance or to get a passport over the fact of the voting, that bothers me. That really bothers me. I think voting in of itself is the most important duty we have as citizens. And if I can't even get a college ID without showing real documentation, then what are we just giving away ballots for?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are our elections. And it's like, where's that argument coming from? I mean, not everybody gets a passport, and you have to go through rigmarole to get a passport. And so we value that, right? So we value the border, we value the safety of travel, okay? And your identity, because they want to know who you are when you travel. Then you take that away from our voting process. I have a problem with that, because that's our freedom.
Well, yeah, but what you run against there is, are you suggesting that some forms of ID are not are so easily to duplicate that they're not as sufficient as a passport or, say, a driver's license?
Well, for instance, when we went to I had an issue with this, but the reason why the Republicans tried to push it through and got over 150 IDs approved, to be approved for that will do for your photo ID. I mean, you can go and make a photo ID, and so 150 to be in above that as an official ID to go and vote to prove who you are doesn't prove that you're a citizen of the United States. It doesn't prove, it doesn't necessarily prove your residency either.
Mm-hmm.
So what were
Right.
they doing? What were they thinking about approving 150 different IDs? How about approving passports or approving driver's license? Something that's rigorous.
I see.
Go ahead, Nadine.
Nadine's got.
So
Yeah,
I
I
was
no,
have
gonna say the
a
problem
few
with the,
things. I have a few things, but like the ID situation, like we're getting into the territory of like this is a constitutional matter that the courts have already decided whether we agree or disagree. Like the reason we have student IDs being allowed is because it was a constitutional issue in the North Carolina state constitution, and they had to go back and figure out how to make more IDs available. So this is like beyond whatever recommendations that we can submit.
yeah, we can't,
But
we're just,
college
yeah.
IDs are not wholesale approved either. There are many universities, and I'm in the other committee, and that's an issue, is that there's many universities, including some HBCUs, whose IDs are not going to count as a form of ID at the polling place. But it's also like we can't, as someone who had great difficulty getting a voter to getting my ID so that I could vote. I remember, and it wasn't in North Carolina, but it was in Texas. I had to go to the DMV 3 times. And then I had to have a police officer who saw how much they were struggling because I needed to have I needed to have my insurance company fax something with a date that had a certain time. He escorted me through the DMV saying, like, give this person a driver's license. I don't think having a driver's license is a reason why someone shouldn't vote. What if you don't drive? You don't have to drive to be an American.
There's state
You don't
IDs.
have to travel to have a passport to be able to vote. Like, these are things that if that's part of citizenship, then we like that is just not our understanding. We had Marion County, Indiana, that court case that has decided that, you know, like what is the reasonable expectation for voter IDs, and it is the case that people should have free and accessible access to an ID, and that as long there has to be certain measures put in place in order to implement a voter ID situation. So like people have to have access to these IDs that are more than just driving, because not everyone drives. The reason I had so much difficulty getting a driver's license because I was not driving for a period of time, and I had to like deal with this situation. It was very difficult. And I don't think someone who doesn't speak English, that's going to be extremely difficult to navigate getting a driver's license if you can't read a government website. If there's a whole slew of reasons, and these rules aren't in place for the 99% of people, they're in place for like the 1% of people who are really struggling. Like we have Brandon in our group who says there's prisoners. Prisoners cannot show up at the polling place. They don't have very many options. And so there's a lot of these things, and this is what my personal research is on, that it's for the fringes. And for example, I got an email from my university and they sent it to all faculty and staff that we are not allowed to go vote or go do any election related activities during business hours on university time. That means that the only times that we can go vote are on weekends, and we can't even go on election day to go vote. We were told that we are not
Really?
allowed to use university time to go vote. Too bad, so sad. We could not cancel class. We couldn't do any of that. So they made it very clear that we are not allowed to do any of that, even go to polling place. Like, so I feel like,
Wow.
okay, I would drop my ballot off, but what am I going to do? Risk my job? And I mean, if I feel like it's hard to sometimes think that, oh, it's so easy to get this and this done, but it isn't that easy for some people, especially when you're disabled or you have a language barrier, or I don't know, you have some like physical situation where it's just really difficult to get somewhere at a place at one day on a calendar. So I feel like the discussions about making it more difficult to vote, it's really like easy to go down a slippery slope of like really disenfranchising like less than 10% of people who are not represented on this committee either.
Right.
So
Good
I
point.
feel like that's a
That's a very
discussion,
good
but
point.
also I want to say that in the document I sent Shani a document,
Yes.
and I
Hey, you
actually
want me to
went
put it
through the
up?
data.
You want me to pull it up?
Sure. And I actually went through, and this is my own research data, so it's not like stuff that's just out there. But this is a very partisan difference. If you look at, and I have a couple of things
Oh, one
here.
second, let me pull it up.
Oh, was that not it?
No, let me pull it up here. Oh, I think that I have to go to here.
Mhm.
All right. You're very agile.
Yeah, so I put this up today, so don't
Okay.
blame Shani for not distributing it.
Okay,
But
go for it. Let's see
so
it. What's this say?
the first, I have a bunch of feeling thermometer scores here, and that means that people were asked like how positively or negatively do you feel about something, 0 being more negative, 100 being more positive. And these are the averages, and I asked questions for my own research. I have a set from
Mhm.
2021. These are nationally representative samples, so it's not just North Carolinians. But I think last time specifically we were interested in like feelings towards the post office or postal system, and I have USPS there.
Okay.
And that was from 2021. And then I asked a similar battery, just I think it's showing up weird on this
Can I
Google
ask you something
Doc.
on that before you leave it?
Yeah, sure.
Let me ask you something about, so if you read that correctly, of the thousands people questioned, you're saying 73% of them were comfortable with in-person voting with paper ballots, that it was
Not quite.
properly recording their ballot.
Not quite. Sorry, I should have been more clear. These
Okay.
are this is the average feeling thermometer score. So people could go anywhere from 0 to 100. This is the average score. So someone could have felt 0, someone
Oh,
could
I
have
see.
felt
Okay.
100. This is the average. So
All right.
and
But
I
it gives
didn't.
you a feeling.
Yeah, yeah. And they don't have to
Now,
explain why. It's just whatever. There's literally a happy face and a sad face on the questionnaire.
yeah. Now, let me ask you this. It says universal voting by mail. Is that what I was talking about, where everyone got a ballot to
Yeah.
vote by mail?
Yeah, so this is just the overall average, and then I broke it down by party ID.
Now,
But yeah,
well, we know no one actually votes by internet, right?
actually, no, that has happened.
Really? Really?
Overseas voters there are instances where they vote by internet, and during COVID, I know for sure that the Delaware primaries were conducted. There was an option to do internet voting.
So, all right, one more. What does electronic voting mean? Does that mean electronic voting in person or?
On the machine.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
I abbreviated it here.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Interesting that, yeah. Okay, excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so these are
Proceed.
just some interesting, I mean, obviously in-person ballots, people were, just felt better. And I think on this Google Sheets, it's showing a little wonky, but I asked a slightly different battery in 2022, and we have absentee ballot drop boxes here.
I'm
So
looking. Where is that?
The third one right here.
Oh, there. Okay. Drop boxes. That's higher than I thought it would be.
well, you keep looking, go down to the Democrats, a little scroll down. So we have Democrats and how Democrats feel about certain things.
Oh,
So
okay. Was
in
the one
general, they're
above
more
there?
positive.
The one above there was everyone, right?
Yeah, yeah,
This is just Democrats.
yeah. And then you see here the absentee ballot drop boxes is like very popular among Democrats. So this might also be a divide that we're seeing in our conversations,
Mm-hmm.
is that Democrats they are more positive of drop boxes than universal voting by mail and in paper ballots.
Well, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
but the
Electronic
margin
voting.
there is just, it's so close, it's basically the same. So they're very positive about paper ballots with audit trails, very, very positive about ballot drop boxes, feel pretty good, real good about universal voting, in-person voting with paper ballots. They like that. But then when it gets down to without an
No
audit
paper
trail
audit trail.
and internet, when there's less security, then you have a significant drop
Yeah,
and
now,
approval.
now, maybe Shani or Nadine, when you talk about electronic voting without a paper audit, as I understand it, an electronic voting, there is some record kept of each ballot,
Oh, sorry.
and you can print that out. Is that right, Nadine? In other words, if you're auditing that, like is everywhere in the state like where I vote, where I have a paper ballot, they put it into a machine and it's electronically recorded.
That
Is
is
that
not,
electronic? Is that
no, that
electronic?
would be a paper ballot system.
Okay.
So you have a tabulator. These ones, and sorry, my light situation, either the light's gonna make me look crazy
No,
or
you're
it's
good.
dark.
You're
So
fine.
I
You're fine.
apologize if I turn into like a dark blob. But the I was living in Texas before I moved here. They just have electronic voting machines, no paper audit trail. That's it. You just,
Whoa. Yeah.
but the
What do you
So
reason
mean no
is because
paper
it's
audit
very
trail?
expensive.
What do you mean no paper audit trail? It's just internet voting. They do a check, electronic voting. They do a check mark and no paper.
Yeah, there's no paper. It's just like a terminal and you vote and then you walk out with a sticker.
Yeah,
I'm
but
surprised I'm surprised.
those machines, when you do the check, when you check it on the electronic vote, it does place it on a paper, a ballot that's electronic.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
mean, like it's just like saved on a file and on the machine.
right, but if they
Where
printed it out, they can go back and they can print it out, and they could print it on paper, and they have a ballot, so that what I'm saying is that they can, even with that, they can still track who did what, right?
it prints out, from my understanding, like a report at the end of the day. It's not like you don't a paper audit trail. I mean, you'd have to look at the machines and you kind of get a better idea of what I'm talking about. But they're like little printers that you fill out your ballot, and then it'll like I give you like a little receipt. They're like little receipt printers. And then you
Yes,
can
okay,
check
gotcha.
everything and you have like this paper record. And I've personally not voted in a system that used it, so I'm personally not that familiar with it. That is not what North Carolina uses. They use paper ballots across the state, and then if you wanted to use a vote I'm blanking on the name, but a ballot marking device. So that's a ballot marking device. Will create a ballot for you that you can feed through the scanner. But the electronic DRE voting machines without a paper audit trail, they're much more economically feasible. So you can have lots of terminals in places. And the reason they had it where I lived in Texas and the counties decided their voting systems there is because you could have anyone vote at any precinct anywhere. It doesn't matter because it's all voting machines like that. You just have to program in all the ballots on every machine. So if I wanted to drive to Lubbock and vote in Lubbock, I could go vote, whatever.
Whoa.
Maybe that's extreme, but I could vote anywhere, at least in the county, which made it easy because like where I lived, there was, like it was one of those places where you had to wait for hours because there's just so many people that if you wanted to go to this polling place or that polling place, wherever the line is shortest.
How did it know to give you the right ballot?
Each person had a code and you just programmed in the code. Like you had your personal voter code and then the poll worker would go enter in the code and set you up, and then you'd be, then you vote and leave.
Who gave you the code?
The poll workers would just do it for you. Like they would escort you and set you up.
And they would
think.
Was that poll number, your number, ever changed? Is it once you get it, you always keep it?
I don't think it was like a number that was meaningful. I think they were just, they pull up, you show up, you tell them who you are, they pull up your thing, and then they like print off like a little there's like a little thing that they printed off. I'm trying to remember the steps just for my personal and I think they printed off a little thing. One of the poll workers' jobs was to just like ferret you to a polling, like a machine, and then they would type in the number and say like, good, you're good to go. And then they would go do the same thing for the next person. So I don't think I think the number was just the ballot style. I think it was just that. But there was some record that it was me who voted. I showed up and they had a record of who I was and that I was there, and that I was given that ballot.
Nadine,
Mm-hmm.
here's a question. All right, I want to challenge your ballot. Shouldn't there be, would the computer be able to pull up your ballot and create a piece of paper that could be looked at?
Yes, I think there are ways to do that. But
Seems like
it's
they'd have
not,
to be.
it's not like they're printing a ballot though. They're just printing like like that would be a whole thing. If someone were to be like, I don't think this person's a citizen, I think then you'd have to like stop that machine from being in service and like take out the card and then like remove the information from the machine, or just file the paperwork for challenging me and then deal with it later. I don't know. This is like, I'm not an expert in Texas voting systems.
Right.
So,
Well,
but
that's why I'm glad we live in North Carolina, because I think North Carolina's voting system is pretty darn solid.
but I
Yeah.
liked that voting in any polling place. Like that was extraordinarily helpful. Here, I mean, where I live
I
with
don't think there's a
traffic.
problem in North Carolina at all. I really
Oh,
don't.
I have to wait for, last time I voted here, I waited for hours.
You did? Where
Yeah,
are you
the
voting?
last two. There's one early voting place here in like Wilmington, and you go to the senior center and you wait in line.
Okay.
If you can go when you can go, because remember, I can't go during work. And then
well, I will say I can understand why the electronic voting without paper audit trail didn't score as high as the others, even for Democrats. I mean,
yeah,
it is a bit worrisome.
but the difference in the cost is we're talking millions of dollars. I just published research and I know this, and I know this fact is not well known, but like my personal research, one piece that's under peer review, and I looked at the cost of all these things. It's a substantially higher cost. Like I don't think a lot of places have an extra couple millions of dollars to spend on that. You know, it's kind of like nothing's happened in the past. And I know it also is the case that this is newer technology. So if you got your things during the HAVA funding, and a lot of places still have the same systems that they bought in like 2006, the voter verified paper audit trails were just not available. So you would have to redo your whole system. And most places who are in a situation where they're looking at this, they can't afford it, period. No, that's the only reason. Of course, everyone would have it fancy as possible, but they can't. So going down to Republicans, it's much different.
Yep.
UPS. Wow.
Yep, makes sense. Absolutely.
In-person. So you would say what we do in North Carolina is the in-person voting with paper ballots. They put the paper ballot into a feeder. You saw it go into the feeder. You made an assumption that it got registered.
And on top of that, each ballot can be traced back to the particular person. It's solid.
Right.
It's solid. We can find out.
Right.
And it makes it better to cure ballots. So
yeah.
North Carolina's system, I think we should be very, very proud in how it works. I really do. I think it's one of the best in all of the country, because there is a healthy balance between accessibility and security right now. Could we do better? Yeah. But at the same time, I want people to have trust in our elections. And the way people have trust in our elections, when they trust them, it makes a much better place to live, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
The only thing to keep in the back of your head, it's like, this is the con of these paper ballots also, is that, and I'm learning through the other things I'm doing, that you need to have these ballot marking devices for people to vote who are not like just able-bodied English speakers. And the fact of the matter is that they don't have these available in every polling place, and the poll workers don't know how to use them.
What,
So
Well,
I'm
that
sorry,
to
I don't
me,
understand
if
that.
that's the case, to me, that is an easy fix.
it
You
is,
know,
it is the
it,
con. That's the con. That's like the thing about the con about paper ballot systems is that you have slightly more difficulty dealing with people on the margins.
well, one
That's the
thing
only
we do know from sure, just by looking at your data, that Democrats and Republicans have a heck of a lot more faith in person voting with paper ballots. By far, way above. They may have disagreements on other things as it makes sense. There's the people are smart. It makes sense that they would have questions about USPS or that they have questions about universal voting. Democrats felt the same way. They had different margins there, but they still felt the same way. The trend was going in the same direction. So in all of it, it confirms that the majority of people, Democrat or Republican, really do trust in-person voting with paper ballots. And if
But don't
that's
you,
the case,
yeah,
and that's a strength, that is a strength that's not a hindrance. And
sure.
so that you can build on that. Yes, we can expand and we can thoughtfully and carefully and cautiously, but I don't think it should just be just throw it out there and just give everybody a darn ballot. We'll just mail it to your house. That's
Let me
not how
ask,
to secure ballot. So
right, Nadine,
I like what you're showing. Um, they fall in line together more so on that end. So let's look at this. What's this? The 2022 Republicans. They still
is
seem
Nadine there?
Republicans. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
Nadine's
here.
here.
What is that showing?
It's
This is
showing in
another year.
2022. She did the other survey in 2022, and you're seeing a trend in the Republican side. Lack of trust. They're still steady on the trust of in-person voting with paper ballots. And if you turn it up, let's go back.
They like the audit.
They have our increased trust slightly in electronic voting as long as there's a paper audit trail. But look what happened to the other ones. Oh my gosh. They really, some of them really plummeted.
What I think the trend, what I think that shows, if I were looking at
And
all
look
of,
at Democrats too, or these are independents. Again, it's interesting that the independents, look at what the independents feel about USPS.
whoops, it slipped away from me. Wait a minute.
Independents trust USPS more than Republicans.
Can you move it
And
back to the independents?
yeah, I'm just quickly looking. And USPS is slightly greater with Democrats. Okay, so independents right here,
Well, where is it? Oh,
2021.
right. Some of these, the questions were different.
Yeah,
So,
these are just two different surveys with different research questions, and but in 2021 I didn't know I was on the mail-in ballot committee.
That's
right.
okay. You know what? You did a good job, Nadine. You did a nice job. It's given us a little glimpse into something really big, you know? So real good. Okay, so look at number 2022 and independence still pretty much stays the same in 2022. Independence didn't really move a lot.
No, the appearance to me is that however you vote, like look at the high number. Oops, wait a minute.
Go ahead. Sorry.
The high number of electronic voting with paper audit trail is a pretty good number. It's almost 70%, about the same as in person, give or take. But the audit piece, I think, is what they were felt better about. That because, or if you follow what I'm saying, I think it seems to me the trend is, okay, I feel real comfortable that when I'm in person, that my ballot will count. If I'm voting some other way, I do need some security. The idea of a paper audit makes me feel more secure.
Yes. Now,
Um,
that I think that when looking from a committee standpoint, going by just this simple survey, it's only 1,000. It's in 2 years' time, so it's not long term or anything, but it's just a simple glimpse into people's mindsets and attitudes. The one thing that stayed consistent across the board is they would like an audit trail and paper ballots. And that's across the board, independents, Democrats, Republicans. That is a strength. You take
right,
that data and you run with that. You say, okay, we trust the people. And if we're here about public trust in elections, and that's why we're here, then you take what they're telling you. And that's the common piece right there. And that's a strength. So why I wouldn't be the one to recommend it turning it upside down, because then you're going against what the majority all agree,
right,
that the best
right.
way to secure elections is paper ballots that can be audited. Now, the other parts like universal voting, it's also agreed across the board through Democrats, Republicans, and independents, that they have a much less trust in universal voting and electronic voting without audit trails, and internet voting greatly distrust that. So if that's the case, then wouldn't we be responsible to highlight what the majority feel? And that's how our recommendations would
Well,
be
I
presented.
still say I don't want to diminish the value of a robust mail-in opportunity for, as Nadine talks about, being able to catch those people who are just not able to get up like you do, get in your car, drive down on a Tuesday and vote. On my way to running errands or going to work,
Yes.
because I'm a professional. I can go to work whenever I want. And so I still think we have to, I don't want to walk away from the idea of a robust system for absentee voting. I mean, but I agree with you that I don't see any trend that's ready to do like Oregon and send everybody a ballot, the universal voting by mail. I don't see that as indicative, is shown here in the Dean's. I mean, there's a number of people who say it's good, like the independent. Would the Nadine, would the
But
independents
Bill,
be younger? The
but
independents
Bill,
might be younger.
well, and Bill, may I add this? May I just add this piece of info? One of the ways that we have increased accessibility to voting is through early voting. And that has been quite successful.
Yes.
And in fact, just in Orange County alone, the majority of people participated in early voting. So right there, it's very successful in early voting. You open up a certain set of voting locations that are in common areas around the county or the precinct. And then people have the ability to go and early vote.
Right. That's a good point.
And here in Wilmington, though, there's one early voting center for a whole city.
Well, okay, and that's terrible. That's terrible. But that's a county board thing, that the people of that county have the power. The local government and the people have the power to say, look, we want more. You can advocate for yourself. We want more early voting places in this county. I mean, that should be tried first. And early voting, they have all the setups for people who have mobility issues to make sure that they're able to sit in their car and they don't necessarily have to come in. Okay.
Well, okay. let's answer that a second. Let's take that down just for a second. The analogy would be the drop boxes. You know, that one Oregon manual I looked at said that for every so many people there needed to be a drop box. Okay. I suppose the state could legislate or make a rule or whatever that there'd have to be so many early voting sites per 50,000 people or something like that to try to take into account the larger metropolitan areas.
I mean, yeah, if they really truly were serious about accessibility, like in the Wilmington area, in that county area or region, then why aren't they discussing early voting?
But I'm saying, Shani, if they're not doing it, is that something that should be dictated from the state level?
Well, there's controversy in that. There's controversy. There's some controversy that we would have to work out. But I would say, what's wrong with advocating on the local level to your local county board of elections? I mean, they get their money, and they get their money from the state. They get their money from the county as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's doable, and you can really advocate for more.
But it
But
could be the
people
case
have to do that.
It could be the case that they're having fewer voting, like early voting, because people are voting absentee or prefer to vote absentee. Like in Wilmington, there's a lot of disabled elderly people, I think, who would much rather just vote absentee than to shuffle themselves all the way to the polling place, even if it's curbside. Like there's a nursing home on every street, and there are people who are just invalids, and there's a lot of people here like that. And that's just the fact of the matter. I have a feeling that if you were to ask someone at New Hanover County Board of Elections, they'd probably say they're so limited on their early voting because they definitely had a bunch of early voting during COVID. So I know that there's locations, they're just choosing not to do them. Like they don't have them in all the libraries. They don't have them. I don't know if there's a downtown voting location. They didn't have one in the elections office.
Nadine,
they would probably say it's early.
Well, I would say, let me just add, I mean, I'm feeling you there, because to me, that's a leadership issue.
Is it a partisan issue?
Yeah, is it a partisan issue?
It could be. Obviously, it could be. I mean,
it could be.
That's
a great question, Becky.
Depending on the county, it could be, I suppose.
Yep.
I mean,
but that doesn't mean that you can't bring about awareness and make a movement to the state board of elections. You know, there could be some work done on advocating for more early voting sites. I mean, if Orange County, which has less people in it, I think probably than Wilmington area, I'm guessing, maybe, I don't know. But regardless, I think we have 5 to 7 early voting. I can't remember now, but between 5 and 7 early voting places in Orange County, and the majority of Orange County is rural. So there's no reason why. I mean, I think if it was handled the right way and pushed the right way, you could really make change in that area for accessibility to voting. And that's not saying no to the mail-in voting piece for the people because you have a higher population. That's just saying, let's add on to it. Let's enhance it. That's something that you could advocate for. A group of people could put pressure on your local government.
Let me pose this. If I'm able-bodied, and let's say I have Nadine's problem, for whatever reasons, I can't vote on election day, but I'm able-bodied, then my first thought is not to go through the mail-in balloting procedure. I'm too busy. You know, I'm going to just go early vote. And I'll bet you, would any of you agree with me on that? That's typically what people would do? Because
yes,
Becky, you agree with that?
I agree.
It's a little much trouble to approach this mail-in balloting thing if you don't do it every week. I mean, And I, once every
True.
3 or 4 years, it's daunting to
Yeah.
say, that's the last thing I want to do is have to mail it in. I mean,
Well, when I was a single mama, everybody, one of the things I have a problem with the Republicans is that they're all hell bent on saying no to voting on Sunday. And I'm sorry, but I was a single mother working. I was struggling. And if
yeah,
I needed to vote, I could go on my Sunday because that was the one day that I could do it. And so I
right.
don't have a problem with that. I think I just don't have a problem. I want accessible. I want it. But where I deviate from more of the Democrat way is that I want the accessibility, but I demand the security. So if it's going to be more accessible, then more money and more effort and more intention and more credibility is going to have to come to the security of it,
All
because I
right.
don't
Are you
trust
more
drop
worried?
boxes.
Are you
I
more
don't.
worried about? Are you more worried about your vote counting, or you're more worried about people corrupting the system with the mail?
I'm concerned for both, because when people corrupt the system, which has been shown to happen, then my vote doesn't count. It takes away my vote.
Well, not
I don't
altogether.
want
Don't
people
be.
voting that shouldn't be
Don't feel
voting.
that bad about it.
No, I do. I do. I take it very, very seriously. And I would say I can't speak for all Republicans, but I know a lot of them, and they feel the same way. When you start compromising the security of your vote, it removes the strength of your own vote. And I just don't like that. I'm okay with people voting and having access, and I get it. I get people are going to and fro. I get that people I have been an advocate for people with disabilities my whole life. Okay, I know their
Mhm.
challenges. However, if we're going to do that, then I want security like you've never seen, you know? Go ahead, Nadine.
But additionally, for if you want a ballot that's not in English, you have to vote absentee. Period. And
Oh, is that right?
yeah. So like that's another thing. If you want a ballot in Spanish, you can request, you have to request an absentee ballot, and there are a lot of people who need that.
How many
And
languages are available?
I think that North Carolina just produces Spanish language, and this is like a room for innovation, like having
Mm-hmm.
more languages available.
Mm-hmm.
But there are like, I think if you really wanted to like vote and you didn't want to learn English at all, you could probably procure a translator. And as long as you tell a poll worker, like you can bring a translator, and I think you have to let the poll workers know that you are bringing a translator. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a
Mm-hmm.
big effort. But if you wanted to vote absentee, the website, the North Carolina State Board of Elections website, I think there's instructions and information in Spanish. So if you wanted to request a Spanish ballot, so for example, my husband is, an immigrant and he's primarily Spanish speaker, like that might be something that he would do. And I know his relatives do request Spanish language ballots. So like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I I think like that's another consideration, is that I think maybe an idea is that everyone can just vote absentee if they need to. And so especially for people who, whatever reason it is, if you have some very rare, unusual reason why you can't vote, well, I think the State Board of Election, it seems to me, is just like, well, there's always mail, you can always request an absentee ballot. So I feel like, yes, it's not optimal. I don't think people enjoy voting absentee, but I have voted primarily absentee in my life. And it was not because like it was the most enjoyable way of voting. It was just like the way I had to vote. But
Yeah,
it was
and
available.
Nadine, I'm glad you shared that. I don't really have a problem with natural barriers like deterrence. I've never had I don't know how to say it right, but I don't necessarily think it should be so easy. I think that there is good sometimes to have some barriers to make people, to ensure the security, and also the intent, it's intentional. I
Sure.
just don't think that it's all bad. So
I have a question. Did Michael ever come up with the number of fraudulent votes in North Carolina? I mean, I think we're worried
yes,
about something that's not a big problem. I mean, I'm sorry to say
well,
that, but
yeah, yeah, okay,
Right.
but it's also perception. He can
yeah,
have all the data that he wants, but it's also perception, and we're talking about public trust. And after the
right.
2020 election, that's shot. That's just shot. There isn't any public trust. There's very
Well,
little. It
that's
did a
interesting you
lot
say
of
that,
damage.
Shawnee.
Huh?
Shawnee,
Yeah.
it's interesting you say that. I don't have that same reaction um, for North Carolina. I don't. I mean,
Not for North Carolina. No, because, and I have to agree with you. I am very conflicted. I am conflicted because I was a part of the 2020. I was on the board and I saw how we handled it. And I
which
loved
board?
how we
Which
did it.
board? Remind me which board you were on.
Orange County, I was the
Okay.
secretary.
Okay.
And I served 2 terms, and I absolutely saw and watched, and we were so particular, and I totally, absolutely trusted what we did. And I was the Republican alongside the Democrats that we totally worked so well together. We totally respected one another, and we were able to state our piece and to say, hey, I question this signature or whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
they would catch something. So the way that we worked together helped it. But even in North Carolina alone, what I saw, I like North Carolina's system, but overall the feeling of 2020 election has also grasped me. It's taken
Mm-hmm.
hold, because a lot of things have happened and a lot of things are coming out from the 2020 election and elections even after. I mean, in other, not necessarily here, but we had our own issues here. So yeah, go ahead, Nadine.
I just published, or it's been accepted for publication like just like last week, but it was about beliefs about voter fraud, and I wouldn't say that beliefs are shot. It is a Republican Trump voter situation. The confidence and the voting process is pretty isolated to Republicans and Trump voters. Democrats, record high confidence. Like actually it's like 95%, like most a staggering amount of Democrats were like incredibly confident in the election results. And so I just feel like that
Same
this
thing with
is like a
Gore.
partisan difference. Like
Yes,
Democrats were reassured and became more confident,
exactly.
whereas Republicans not. So I think
And we
that that
saw
is also
that
an
in
important
Gore and
wrinkle.
Bush. We saw that in Gore and Bush with the
It's even
hanging
more
chads.
pronounced. It's even more
It,
pronounced right now.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
Let me
yeah.
ask
It
something.
was highly contentious.
Can I pivot for a second?
Yeah, sure.
You have very few participants on this meeting.
I know.
I know. So shouldn't we? I don't know what your agenda was for tonight. I didn't see it,
It went
but
out the window, Bill.
right.
Even
Okay.
Michael is not here. Michael Bitzer is not
Michael's
here.
not here to keep us on track.
I know, right?
No.
Should
Okay,
we
how about this?
reschedule? Should we
Yeah,
reschedule for a week from now or something and try to reconvene with more people?
well, actually I got something easy if you just give me 5 minutes. For all of us.
Okay.
Well, in
And
your defense, Shawnee, I had this written in my, it was written in the
thank
notes.
you.
Yeah. So
Yes, it
like
was
I
in
knew it
mine
was
too.
coming.
That I
It's
knew we were having a
Nadine's
meeting.
fault. Hey, listen, but let me tell you something, you three. I could sit here and talk to you all night long about all of this, and I absolutely enjoy it. I don't mind the debate, and I just love it. And I think that it works, you know, it works and it's important.
Sure.
It's important.
Sure.
Okay, so this is what I need you all to do. Since the three of you are here, this is what your homework is. And
Okay.
I think after this vibrant discussion, I think it's going to go well. And if you promise me that you could write down your thoughts, this is the template that Michael gave me. I'm going to send it to you tonight.
All right.
And I kind of filled some of the areas in that were super easy. For instance, the committee name. I put in the committee members, and we have to make sure that these committee members are, it's actually a true representation of our active members, because many have dropped off, which is normal. That's a normal thing that happens in groups. The number of committee meetings, they wanted to know when we're meeting and how we met. Now this area, public meetings and input, summarize the input here, but include a link to the online survey data. That was something that Michael was supposed to get me that he never did over this past month. But that doesn't mean Nadine and Bill and Becky, our discussions tonight, even on this piece of information that we were given and from past meetings, I would like you to go into this public meetings and input, our input, and summarize based upon your experience of this committee, of our discussions, and the data that has been presented to us. Put some bullet points down, okay? Make it count. And something to discuss. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs, we need ideas down here and what you feel, okay, of how, you know, the data, the input, the discussion, you know, whatever it is, just put it down, okay? Then it says, what specific topics did your committee study? And I actually wrote, and this is just a draft. I wrote, the discussions covered a range of topics, including mail-in voting laws and rules, absentee or mail-in voting processes, public awareness and education, perceptions and attitudes towards mail-in voting, accessibility, security, and how these issues intersect with current events in public discourse. That's pretty simple. The current practice in North Carolina, it says we will address the actual section of the mail-in voting and anything else we know from county election directors that may not be enumerated there in that section. So that's going to be a little bit more intensive, you know, to make sure that we get the laws and processes down. We don't have to tackle that this week, okay? What I'm concerned about are your opinions, your insights, your reaction to data, that kind of stuff. It said, what did your committee learn during the process? I wrote, mail-in voting in North Carolina, like in many places, has led to hard conversations, shared lessons, and thoughtful possible solutions. Committee members shared openly and honestly about local concerns, and after lengthy discussions, came to a consensus about general assumptions, considerations, and helpful recommendations. These lessons are part of an ongoing conversation about how to improve and refine mail-in voting systems to ensure they are both accessible and secure for all eligible voters. I would also like somebody to write a sentence in there or two regarding that the lessons are also, we also discussed public trust. We need to address, that's a part, that's one of the foundational pieces to this is public trust. What I wrote is I wrote 5 lessons. Accessibility versus security balance. One key lesson is the delicate balance between making voting accessible and ensuring its security. North Carolina has grappled with this, implementing measures like signature verification to prevent fraud, while also facing challenges in ensuring that voters, especially those with disabilities or in remote areas, can easily access mail-in voting. We can also write in here, not just signature verification, but photo IDs and any other kinds of things that, you know, had been passed that address accessibility versus security. The 2, importance of clear guidelines. Another lesson is the critical need for clear and consistent guidelines. Confusion can arise when rules and procedures for mail-in voting are not transparent or are subject to changes close to election time. Ensuring that voters understand the process can help prevent misunderstandings and disputes. Number 3, I wrote equitable distribution of resources. The distribution of resources for mail-in voting is a lesson that has come to the forefront, ensuring that all communities, regardless of their demographic or geographic makeup, have equal access to resources like drop-off locations, postage-paid envelopes, and assistance with form completion is crucial for a fair electoral process. Now, in that, I'm personally, along with many, are against drop-off locations. But we can say that in this area. Okay, we can talk about that difficult conversation. And then 4, technology and infrastructure upgrades. North Carolina's experience also highlights the need for continuous technological and infrastructure upgrades. This includes systems for tracking ballots, secure methods for online application submissions, and efficient communication channels to keep voters informed about the status of their ballots. And then lastly, I wrote 5, the 5th lesson, community engagement and education. Lastly, mail-in voting has underscored the importance of ongoing community engagement and education efforts, informing voters about deadlines, eligibility criteria, and the overall process can help build trust in the system and encourage greater participation. Now, that's just the beginning. We can expound on those things. We can grapple with, some of us felt this and the others said, brought up concerns about this, So we can grapple with those lessons learned and deeper conversations, not to lengthen it greatly because you want to keep this nice, short, and concise, but to bring in a little bit more like understanding of the greater discussions. And so my question to you all is, and then of course down here was just I put this here for reference because this is what we all had agreed with between the assumptions and recommendations. And you can use that as a resource, and that's probably going to go in our report most likely because that's what we really bounced from, grappled with these things. So here is your list. Here's this, the assumptions and recommendations. So my ask for you all is, I started it, so add your thoughts. Add your data that you want. Nadine, I loved what you brought tonight. What a vibrant conversation.
You could just staple that on the back of it. That's fine.
But well, actually we can, but there has to be some sort of narrative in there to refer to that data and what it's all about. So in the discussion therein, so maybe you can add that. And I'm sure you've already summarized it somewhere for your report. You probably have a really nice summary that you can tweak.
Oh no, I made that just for this.
You're kidding.
No, I made it just for this.
You are a rock star,
Good
man.
girl.
That's awesome. So Nadine, just go a little bit further and put the narrative with the data.
Okay.
And we know you can do it.
Yeah, no problem.
You're getting published, girl. That's awesome. Okay,
I have this data for my research, and so I just put it together specifically for you guys.
It was fantastic, and it was so interesting, It really was.
Good work.
Yeah, it really was. It brought it about. It actually helped to confirm, what we were already thinking anyway. So, but it was nice to see it in graphs and data, and I love it. I love it. So if us three could agree, since we're getting down to a skeletal group here, that we tackle it in that sense. I started it out for us, kind of add some substance to it. But don't do so much of it that it becomes 10 pages, because we don't want that.
All right.
What is the timeline for putting all of this stuff together? Are we still meeting sometime in the summer to,
Yeah, we
as
are.
a whole group,
We're
or?
meeting every month.
No, I mean the whole
Yes. Oh,
commission.
yes. Yes, we are. I was gonna put some time in for Rachel to just, she has been putting out some emails reminding us that there is going to be a regathering of the full group. I don't know when that is. But I would be watching my email to make sure that we're there. And also, this committee is going to continue to meet to refine our report because our final report will be submitted in August. So we
Okay,
just have a
yeah.
couple of more meetings.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. August. Okay.
Yeah, August. I put September in here in this section where it was the number of committee meetings. I put September, but I don't know if we're going to meet to September. That's just a guesstimate.
Hey, Shawnee, it's Rachel here.
Yes.
So the next in-person meeting is tentatively scheduled for July 15th. I say tentatively, we're planning for July 15th. And they are hoping to have like these draft findings in June for us to kind of review ahead of July.
Okay, cool. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. So when do we need to have our little draft into you guys?
So I would say have your draft finalized by June.
So we have 2 more meetings to finalize this.
Yes.
Okay. So Bill, Becky, and Nadine, we're in
All
on this
right.
together.
Now,
All right.
So,
I do need to tell you that I leave May 1st and I'm not back until June 8th. I'm going to be in Italy for 6 weeks.
oh my
All
gosh.
right.
Aren't
So
you
I'm,
fu- Okay,
I'm
we're
kinda-
coming for wine. We're gonna come for wine and cheese, and
Right,
we're
we
having
live
a
in
meeting,
this. Why don't we
meeting over
meet
there.
wherever Becky is? Let's have an in-person meeting.
We're coming, Becky.
okay, I'll have you.
Um, well, if there is a way then that before you leave, Becky, the sooner the better, to be able to provide some insight on from you would be very important.
Okay.
So if you could do that, and I would say, please all, I always say this, let's just get this done. And we don't want to be at the last minute and then lay it all on just a couple of people, 1 or 2 people to finish the
Right.
report.
Right.
I mean, it is normal in any committee that people will drop off like flies. And then you get a core group of people that will come on a regular basis. And then it's usually the small group that actually gets the things done. But so please do this. Put it together while it's fresh in your mind and get it back to me. The sooner you can get this back to me, the sooner I can put it all together and make
Okay.
make it so nice and presentable. And then the next meeting that we come, I got it all together for you, and it's coherent and it aligns well, and then we got something that we could really work towards before Becky leaves. I mean, she's leaving before our next meeting, I think.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, then I would say
Safe travels.
Yeah, safe
Thank you.
travels. You will be missed, Becky, and thank you. Even the input that you give tonight is, when you push back, it's so important. So I appreciate it too. And so what you can provide us as soon as possible will be paramount.
Okay.
All right. Any questions, any thoughts for today, Nadine?
Thank you. We had a good discussion.
As
Yes.
always.
Right. I'm good.
Okay, then the next meeting is, let's see, I got it here. The next meeting is May 9th. And I promise I won't be so late putting out the notice.
Okay.
I don't think you should feel bad. Like, clearly we're here. We're adults, and you say it like, and you did send out like, here's the link. I mean, I don't think you should feel bad.
Well, thank you, Nadine. I do try. I really do. And so I'll be
I
really
had it in my
excited.
calendar.
Yeah,
I
it's in
know.
the
Hey,
calendar.
hey, we're
Yeah.
all adults. We know that we're meeting in the second Thursday. Okay.
But you had already sent a calendar invite because it was in my calendar.
yes, I
Yeah,
did.
mine too.
Yes, I
Yeah,
did.
so there's nothing, I don't think you should feel bad. People probably not here because they're not here, not because you didn't
Well,
remind
that's
them.
probably true.
Right.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Well, thank you for that, Nadine. I appreciate that.
All
I
right. Well,
really
let's
do.
get to talk to y'all. And
Hey,
we'll
Will, have a great evening. And Becky, safe
Yes.
travels. Enjoy yourself. Send pics.
Okay.